Salut tout le monde! Welcome back to Unintentionally Frenchified. We have a very spicy subject today, a controversial subject, a battle, French, American of the utmost importance, and a very big debate. The hug versus la bise. Who does it better? And when I mean better, I mean who does it simpler, less intrusive, and just easier to understand. I feel like la bise is making quite a raging comeback right now in France. I think because COVID has been calmed down for a long enough period of time, the French are starting to feel more comfortable, getting up in each other's grill when it comes to family and friends and social settings. And so I'm seeing it a lot more. So the video is perfect timing. I've been in France for 12 years. I have always felt as a foreigner that the hug is just, as I said, a little bit less intimate, easier to understand when you do it and when you don't, and less complicated to pull off than la bise. However, I am well aware that my opinion is not the only one that counts, and I'm 1,000 times biased. So I can't wait to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I'm going to talk about the similarities and differences between the two different greetings, and it's up to you guys to all tell me what you think is the easiest, simplest, and less intimate. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. And otherwise, I think, c'est parti. Before I jump into the similarities and the differences, la bise is part of the French culture. And when you want to learn a new language, it is super important to also understand the culture where the language you're learning originates from or is spoken. Not everybody is really into the cultural side of language learning, but Lingoda is, and I would highly recommend Lingoda if you're thinking about learning a new language. Lingoda does face-to-face learning from anywhere in the world. They are an online language learning school. They're the #1 online language learning school. They have classes 24/7, and all of their teachers are native speaking language teachers. And what's really great is you can learn a new language, whether it's English, German, Spanish, or French, and you're gonna focus, of course, on listening, on comprehension, on writing, on speaking, but you can also learn about culture, much like the video today about la bise versus the hug. Lingoda also has these really great language sprints where you can challenge yourself to sign up for either 15 classes a month for 2 months, which is called the sprint, or for the super sprint, you can do 30 classes a month for 2 months. What's so great is if you commit to a certain amount of classes and you do them for the amount you commit to, you either get 50% cash back for the sprint, or for the super sprint, you get 100% cash back. So not only is it quite the deal, but it's over a really short period of time, 2 months, and you feel massive progress when you're done with it. It is so motivating to continue your language learning journey. It's super simple to sign up for the classes, and you don't necessarily need to stay in some kind of certain order. So if you're into more of the cultural classes, then you really can sign up for those ones first too. All of the information about Lingoda is in the YouTube description below. You also, with my discount code, get a 20 euros off your sign up fee, your registration fee to reserve your spot. So that's really cool too. So if you're hesitating whatsoever, if you're interested in learning a language and also want to be learning about the cultural side too, then really go check out Lingoda. Everything is below for you to find it. Okay, first up, when do you actually do these two greetings? So there are some similarities. So for example, in both the US and France, when you are greeting your family members, friends you are very close to, you give a bise if you're in France, and you do the hug if you're in the US. This is, for the most part, we can say that's pretty general, and that's very simple, and it's not very hard to understand. It's also pretty easy to understand, I think, in both cultures, that when you are meeting somebody where it's a very formal occasion, a professional, for example, handshaking, that comes off to be like the most common greeting in both France and the US. So that's very clear. Now where it starts to get murky is, for example, where I think it's more confusing in the US than in France is when somebody you know very well is introducing you to somebody that they know very well but that you don't, that is your age. So I'm gonna give the example of France. If I arrive to a party in France and I know the host very well, let's say there's 15 people, okay, in the room, the French host is gonna take me around and introduce me to every person, and I'm going to faire the bise. I would give them each a kiss on their cheek because they're the same age as me. We both know somebody very well in common. We're in a social setting that's not formal. We would say hello that way. Okay, no problem. In the US, it's a little bit more unclear. I'm in the same setting, it's a party. First off, in the US, the host probably isn't gonna take me around and introduce me to everybody. They're more likely to say like, hey guys, everybody, this is Kate. And everyone's gonna say, hey Kate. And then I'm gonna probably like give a wave from the side of them like, hey, nice to meet you. And then I will mingle with them during the night and it's fine. That was kind of my greeting. Imagine that somebody is there, they're standing in the kitchen and I get like a one-on-one greeting with them. You wouldn't really shake their hand, I guess, because it might be a bit formal. But at the same time, I wouldn't really want to hug them maybe yet if that's not like my personality. If you're super bubbly, energetic, and you're really touchy, maybe you're gonna do a big like, ah, hey, and you give someone a hug, but it's not for sure either. And so you might just kind of end up awkwardly like waving or just being like, ah, hey, nice to meet you, and just, grabbing a drink. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could happen, and a lot of that you'd base off of what the other person is doing too. So that's a bit murky and probably really complicated for a foreigner to understand. Where I think it's complicated when it comes to France with le bise of when to do it is if somebody I know really well is introducing me in France to somebody that they know very well, but who is much older than me. Okay, so I'm gonna give the example of my sister-in-law. So my sister-in-law, Apolline, I'm very close to her. I bise her whenever I see her, and she's introducing me to her parents. Their parents are much older, so there's a bit more of a distance between us, but I know Apolline really well. So do you go in for the bise or do you go in for a handshake? Like, what do you do? And the problem is that sometimes you go in for the handshake and they go in for the bise, and then you end up giving a bise and a handshake at the same time. It's very awkward. In the US, it would right away be a handshake. We would know that that wasn't, for the most part, like a hug situation. Again, you can have people that are way more touchy-feely. You can be in an area of the US where it's more common to say give hugs, but then it will be very common to give a hug, and so then you would do something different. But from where I grew up, it would just be very natural to just shake their hand because you're trying to be quite polite and you're showing the respect to someone who's an elder. So if I'm being very objective here, I'm trying not to give the hug more of what it deserves. I would say that both of these have moments where the when you should be doing it is a bit unclear. So up to you guys to decide which one is the most unclear, but goes both ways, right? Okay, next, how to do it. So le bise, I think, is quite confusing in the fact that you naturally, most people tend, I don't know if this is a righty versus a lefty, you guys will have to tell me in the comments, but most people tend to go to their left, meaning that you touch your right cheek and then your left cheek. So it's like this, okay? But sometimes you go to one side and someone else goes to the same side. So you're almost about to smack lips, and then you're like, whoa, and then both try to switch at the same time, and then both switch, and it takes like a second to make the bise work. So already, because there's not exactly one way that you should go to, it's a bit awkward sometimes. And then on top of that, the actual number of kisses that you do, depends based on the region. And it's not necessarily the region you're standing in, it could just be where that person grew up. So you never know if they're gonna go for 2, maybe 3, or maybe even 4. My husband comes from the south of France where they do 3 kisses where he's from. So sometimes it's quite awkward because I go in for the kiss and then the second one, and then I'm waiting to see if they're going for the third one. They're waiting to see if I'm backing up because they know I'm not from set, and so I'm probably only gonna go for 2. And it can just get very awkward. And someone starts to back away while the other one's still going in, and then they're just like randomly kissing the air, and it's just like cringe-worthy. Okay, so That's kind of complicated. So the hug can also change depending on how well you know somebody. My French husband would argue all of the time till his death that the hug is way more intimate than le bise because you are literally pressing like your chest, your breasts, your genitals, your legs like up on someone else in like this big like sandwich. He's not wrong if like you are romantically involved in someone or I don't know, it's like your family or something, then yes, you're probably going in for a full frontal like hug where like everything is touching, right? However, like when you're hugging somebody that you don't really want to be pressing all of those body parts next to them, what you tend to do is kind of like pushing your bottom out so that when you hug somebody, you're really only touching possibly this part of your chest, right? It's not like you're smashing your breasts if you're a woman next to them. You're really kind of popping your bottom out and only touching the upper part of your body, but like really upper. And honestly, I've never had a situation where I felt like someone took advantage of a hug, but of course, maybe you guys have, so let me know in the comments. But you know, we even have like one-armed hugs where like you go in from the side and you're more like touching your sides here. I remember that being like a really popular thing at school with like the teachers and the students. If you like went in for a hug, it was always like a side hug. But you can also do like a bit of a hug like that where it's less maybe potentially intimate if it feels like too intimate. I do agree with my husband that you can make a hug a bit more, I guess, intimate in a way if you manage to like snuggle your head into someone's shoulder, because women tend to be shorter than men. I would say that's more of a woman doing it, but you could like kind of like snuggle your head in there at some point. But again, I don't know. I've never had a hug before where I felt like it was taking up too much of my personal space, obviously because I'm used to it. Whereas with le bise, I have felt that many times, and mainly because, you know, the bise is supposed to be cheek to cheek, right? Like you're really, if this is someone, you know, you hit your cheek, you make your kiss sound, you make your kiss sound, and you move back. So it's really the cheeks. And like, I'm very comfortable touching my cheeks for the most part with someone. I don't find that to be like too big of a deal, except people don't always just touch the cheeks, guys. Like sometimes people absolutely kiss you right on the mouth. And I think some of the cheeky guys have gotten way too close to my lips before, like uncomfortably close. And I didn't enjoy that. Like I didn't enjoy feeling like it was supposed to be just a really casual greeting between two people who I didn't know most of these people that well, but don't know each other that well, but are being introduced by someone you know well, and you're going in for like quite the cheek kiss. Please, someone else tell me in the comments if this has happened to you too, because this is not like a one-time thing. Like this has happened to me on multiple instances, and I'm not here for it. Okay, now where to put your hands. This too sometimes can be a bit awkward for both le bise and the hug. When you go in for le bise, I feel like people tend to keep their arms down if you don't know somebody very well. There's not any other touching going on, because I do think that becomes a bit more intimate. So, you know, my hands are often like whatever, holding my purse or like down in front of me. And I just like, you know, it's more of like a head bob. When I know somebody well, I tend to touch them. I tend to touch them on my shoulders. Like I almost balance myself a bit more so I'm not like falling into them, because this has happened before. Yeah, or I put my arm on their back, or, you know, I give a little rub or something at the same time that I'm doing it, or a little hand like this on the side of their arm. With the hug, I feel the same way. I kind of feel like your arms, well, obviously when you're hugging someone, you touch them, but a lot of times arms are gonna go around here. So you're crossing arms, one's going over the shoulder, one's going like underneath the other arm, and then you kind of give like a back pat, or, you know, you give like a little squeeze or something. Maybe this is confusing for foreigners now that I think about it, because I've never really thought about where to put my hands when I hug somebody. So maybe my whole le bise is more confusing than the hug isn't quite the truth. All right, I've gone through all of the details, the similarities, the differences, everything I can think of about the hug versus le bise. Now it's time for you guys to tell me in the comments below what you think, or are there things I've forgotten or stuff I should have mentioned? Let it roll. Don't forget about Lingoda. It's in the YouTube description below. You can go check out everything. I put the link there. I put the discount code. If you're interested in learning a language and getting the cultural side of it, you should do it. I will see everybody else la semaine prochaine, or in the comments. Bisous.